today is that whole exchange between Pilate and Jesus, and Pilate ultimately handing Jesus over to be crucified. Just wanted to make some observations from today's text, which is just right off the bat, just one ironic thing is that they themselves did not enter. So these religious leaders, they themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters. So they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So here they were, manipulating the system, manipulating the government to try to get Jesus crucified. And they didn't enter Pilate's headquarters because that would make them religiously defiled. So they really wanted to keep the law of God, I guess, and so that they can eat the Passover. I just found that so tragic and ironic at the same time. Ironic because Jesus is the Passover lamb. He's the ultimate Passover lamb. But there they were, handing Jesus over to be crucified. Okay, get rid of him, but we want to eat the Passover. So that's just so ironic. And at the same time, it's very tragic and relatable in a way, because that separation between religiosity and the veneer of righteousness, as opposed to what is really happening internally and what their actual behavior is. And yeah, so that's something to take note of. Another thing that I noticed was when there's that famous conversation between Jesus and Pilate, where Pilate ends by saying, "What is truth?" You know, that "Chaos veritas," that line, right? Well, it turns out, what is this truth that he's talking about? Because Jesus says, "For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I came into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to me." So yeah, Pilate was referring to what Jesus is saying. He's saying he just talked about the truth. So Pilate goes, "What is truth?" So what is the truth that we're talking about? So this whole topic that has been happening here has been all about, are you the king? Are you a king of the Jews? Jesus suddenly gets all personal on him. Are you saying this of your own accord? Is that a genuine question from you? And Pilate's like, "What are you talking about?" You know, and all that stuff. And goes, and then he talks about, "My kingdom is not of the world." And he goes, "Oh, so you are a king." And Jesus says, "You say that I'm a king." Okay, so this whole issue is, who is Jesus? Is he a king or not? And Pilate is talking in terms of political king, but Jesus is basically telling him, you say that I'm a king. I came to bear witness to this truth. You know, so, but my king, I'm a king of a kingdom that is not of this world. And yeah, actually Jesus is king. Jesus is king in a way that is far beyond anything that Pilate could have ever imagined. He is the king of the universe. He's the king, the ultimate king. And that's the truth. And that was a conversation that they were having, and Pilate misses it. What is truth? And the final thing that I noticed was that how many times Pilate goes back and forth between the outside and inside. You know, at first he goes outside to them, including the religious rulers, to sort of receive Jesus. And then after that, he enters his headquarters, right? He enters his headquarters, and then he starts having this conversation, this really eerie conversation with Jesus about truth and king. And then he went back outside to the Jews there and told them, "I find no guilt in him." And then he says he went out again. So so during this time he goes back in again, I guess, right? So there's that kind of back and forth there. And he entered his headquarters again and talked to Jesus. "Where are you from?" He has another conversation. So when Herod brought Jesus out, so he's outside again, and then he gives his final judgment. So total of 7 times actually going back and forth. I don't know if I counted that right, but so what does that tell us? I think it's a kind of a really sad but relatable picture of the vacillation of Pilate. There he is, he's out, he's inside, and I got some pictures there. So inside he's having this really eerie one-on-one conversation with Jesus, where Jesus asks him these questions. And then he goes outside, and this is what he finds, right? He's trying to plead. He's like, "Okay, this is what I see." Outside, they're clamoring for something else. And all the while, he is feeling more and more afraid. Pilate, there's a fear of Jesus, of course, but then there's a fear of the crowd. So he goes back and forth. And man, one lesson we can learn is we can actually go back and forth between two sides. And that maybe the outside isn't necessarily crowd shouting at you, but it's all the media shouting at you, the world shouting at you, the desire shouting at you, and the magazine cover shouting at you. And then inside, you have Jesus. And we can have maybe an illusion of neutrality by going back and forth. Well, I want to take both sides. I want to take both sides of the argument. Any kind of illusion of neutrality is broken because ultimately you're going to go with your fears, your greatest fears. And the fear is always the shouts and the clamoring of the crowd produces more fear in us than almost anything else. So, yeah. So I think that's something that I just hope that we can stay inside and communicate with Jesus more and more, and hear him, and to be disturbed in a right way by him, and to talk to him. So just wanted to encourage all of us to do that during this season, especially during Passion Week. All right.